Well, gentlemen, thanks for joining me in 160 Studios today.
Thanks, Joe.
Good to be here.
Good to have you. Joe,
Great
you
to
and
be
I
here.
go back a bunch of years.
Yeah.
This is your first time in studio here, though.
Very first time in studio. Most of the time it's been at LSI or JP Morgan or one of those events. Yeah.
On the road.
So
And
it's
then
nice
Mark,
to be
you're right up the road. in
Right down the
Boca,
street,
right?
about 8 miles, yeah. But good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks. Mark, you're president of the Americas. You've been with Zimmer Biomet for many, many years and have risen through the ranks. And obviously have decided that this is my spot. This is the organization and technology I'm going to go ahead and lead a charge on. And as president of the Americas, what's kept you there for that long?
Yeah, great question. Truly the opportunity, right? The opportunity to differentiate musculoskeletal care and truly believe in that. And over the 16 years that I've been here, I've had multiple opportunities to advance my career. The corporation has absolutely got behind my back and just really had the diversity in different things across the board. And so to your question though, ultimately, what's really kept me here? It's the people, right? It's the people, the ability to make a difference, and the leadership that allows us to do that.
Yeah, and the leadership there has been incredibly, forward leading with technology, with voice of the patient, voice of the clinician, et cetera. Where does that come from?
Yeah, it's to be the boldest med tech company on the planet, right? I mean, frankly, and it resides in a mission. The mission of the organization is to alleviate pain and improve the quality of life for people around the world. And it's not just the implant. While it's a big piece of who we are and what we need to be, the advancement of the technology to take it to that next level for a multitude of end users, whether it's the patient, the physician, the payer, the provider, they're all super important in our journey and have a stake at the table.
And Joe, president now of knees at Zimmer Biomet. I mean,
Week 3.
Week
yeah.
3.
Yeah.
Still standing.
Exactly. I'm super excited to be at Zimmer Biomet. It's been drinking from a fire hose for the first 2.5 weeks, and I'm just thrilled to be here.
And one of the things is, as you and I chatted when you shared with me early that you said, shh, don't tell anybody yet, but here's where I'm going.
Yeah.
Joe, you've been in startups, you've been in large strategics.
That's right.
You've launched very complex robots. You've had AI-driven ICU, CCU type technologies.
Right.
Super successful. And I know, because you and I worked together, you had many options on the table. And when you announced it to the industry, it was Zimmer Biomet, president of knees. What drove that?
Well, as we've discussed in the past, I look at the problems that we can solve, and whether they can be through people or products and technologies, and can you have an impact at scale? I've had an impact with technologies in massive problems that no one has been able to solve. First with working with Fred Moll, David Schumers, Josh Stefanzo at Oris, developing a robot from the ground up, and then ultimately selling that to J&J to smart sensors, utilizing machine learning algorithm to predict catastrophic events like acute kidney injury, which is just devastating and has not been solved. And when Yvonne Tornos reached out to me and asked me about my interest here, I took a step back and had a conversation with you actually and just said, what do you think? And I look at this I segment it a couple ways. First, how big is the problem and what's the impact that I can have with this organization? And is it worth, is it a legacy that I would be very, very proud of? And when I dove in deeper and started looking at what Zimmer Biomet was doing and what they had behind the curtain, it was very appealing to me to impact at such a massive scale with something that has, it's ripe for innovation. Like this entire market, orthopedics, is perfectly suited for massive innovation in the next decade or two.
And Mark and Joe, so when we think about orthopedics, generally, you don't put that up there with AI, digital surgery, surgical robotics, imaging navigation. There are some parts. We've got our ROSA platform, and we've got a Persona IQ platform. Why is this industry, Mark, so ripe, as Joe said, for digital innovation at this point, and Zimmer Biomet leading it?
Yeah, so I mean, joint replacements is probably one of the most successful procedures, but it's not good enough, right? 20% of patients that get knee replacements are not happy with their outcomes, and it's ultimately the question why, right? And historically, metal and plastic Physician puts in an implant, patient leaves, rehabs. How are you doing? I don't know. I feel good. Maybe, maybe not. And the reason for innovation is, to be able to understand that complete journey from the time the patient walks in the door. We have a product called My Mobility that engages the patient 90 days post-op. You're able to monitor that patient to prehab them the appropriate way. Intraoperatively, the patient has the ability to have a robotic knee replacement with ROSA. You're able to capture data there. Gets pushed up to the cloud with preoperative data. You put a smart implant in with PIQ. You collect data post-op. And now you've got the complete continuum of care for that patient, that complete patient journey. And now you can identify what's happening through that journey. Good, bad, benefits the patient, benefits the physician, benefits the payers and the providers. And so that's the ripe for innovation, is a surgical procedure with metal and plastic moving into the opportunity to have predictive analytics with all of those touch points throughout the journey.
Yeah, and with PIQ, that technology came out of Canary Medical with Bill Hunter and the team there. And Bill and I always go round and round is, does the industry want evidence-based outcomes when we haven't had to own up to them in the past?
Well, what we found with some of the previous companies, the future is looking at what you can provide the patient, the doctor, the payer, everybody that is associated with the outcomes of that person. And the more data that you can provide to help that patient on their recovery pathway, the better. And we know this from the companies you and I have worked with in the past, and I see this happening at scale. I spoke with a patient last week, and the patient reached out to me. And it was fantastic to hear their experience with the technology and how interested they are in knowing what their data is. Right now, it's just the implant goes in and it goes dark. I think Bill Hunter says that many times, like it should be providing information to the patient, the caregiver, and of course the person paying for it.
And Mark, you've been at it for 19 years in the implant business. It feels like the patient now, and let's call them the consumer, wants to have an active part in their healing and rehab process. And now we've given them, between pre-op, intra-op, and post-op, if they want to, they can take a very active role in this.
Yeah, there's no question. We have patients coming in asking for PIQ with our physicians because they do want to be that active participant. They want to know how they're measuring up against other people. It's that social environment where you can compare yourself to others, understand where you're at in that journey, all the while having what we would call a guardian angel sitting over top of you, which would be the physician telling you, hey, you're doing great. Hey, no, you're not. You need to rehab harder. You need to come in and see me if there's a problem, or everything's great, continue on as is. So it is important for the patient. They are an active participant versus an active receiver, historically what it would be. But now it's completely different. They're a complete part of their journey, and they're responsible and understand what they can or can't do to improve their outcomes.
And it's great that we see this coming into orthopedics, because while some people may say, well, orthopedic doesn't seem to be as high tech as heart valves or neuro implants, right? But none of those have active implants in them. None of them have active sensors in them that are reporting back the performance of. Yet we're seeing that trend with companies like Canary and partnerships happening in the industry, starting to become almost expected downrange. And what drove that out of Zimmer Biomet? I mean, who said we need to put a sensor that proves what we're doing makes a difference? Where did that come from?
Well, it started with the leadership, right? And it started with that statement of the boldest med tech company on the planet, right? It was probably even before that when that statement started. But we knew basically that 20% of total joints were problematic. And nobody could answer the question why, right? Why is it that 20% of patients are just not as happy as what you'd expect them to be based upon how the surgical procedure was done? And understanding why really drove that from the very top down to understand what was going on.
Yeah. People go to work at companies, but people really go to work for people. And when you watch Ivan Tornos out in the marketplace, every single day on a platform like LinkedIn, I don't know what country he's not been in, or certainly continent he's not been in. He leads from the front. He's passionate about this. I've had the opportunity and privilege to chat with him many times face to face. And what you see online is really who the person is as well. And I've heard that from people who've worked with him over the years, whether it was back in the early days or in the current days at ZB. And bold and forward driving, I think Yvonne leads from the front. How contagious is that? Starting with you, Mark, and then Joe, obviously was a component that attracted you.
Sure.
How contagious is that?
Yeah, well, it's hard to keep up, right? I think that's one of the things I learned early on. So I've been working with Yvonne for almost 5 years now. And I'll tell you, I took this role because of him, right? Because in order to do the things that we know we have to do to change the delivery of musculoskeletal care, you have to work at that pace, right? You have to work with that energy, and you have to think creatively and outside the box. And so it's a huge piece of to your question you started with, why am I still here after 16, 17 years, is because I do see where we're going, but I also understand Yvonne's passion and energy is what's going to help us get there, right? And I think orthopedics over the years is kind of that last frontier, right? You look at cardiac, you look at all these things that moved, and orthopedics has been that stalemate, and over the last 4 or 5 years that started to pivot with the advancement of technology and adoption of all the different technologies. And in order for us to continue at that pace, we have to run fast. And watching Yvonne, his energy, his gregariousness, everything about him, it kind of drives the organization to make sure we keep up with him, right?
Yeah, yeah. And Joe, it had to be one of the critical components in your decision.
I worked with Yvonne at Bard, and so I worked alongside of him. I was managing everything outside the United States. He managed Europe, and I saw his leadership firsthand there. As I was evaluating what was the next technology, the next problem that I was going to solve, one of the things that Yvonne and I talked about was impacting at scale, and what his vision is. When he says the boldest med tech company, that's a pretty bold statement in itself, but he's looking at everything. And what I think you're going to see in the next 24, 36, 60 months is a seismic shift, and he's pushing in. It's exciting. I pushed pause on everything else and focused on Zimmer Biomet, evaluated the opportunity with Yvonne, and really decided that this is a place where I could impact at scale. And the technology that we're implementing, whether it's the sensors in the knees or the precision of the robotics, to me that was the intersection of everything that I've worked a decade in Silicon Valley on, was robotics, sensors, AI. And how can you do that with a strategic, and take a strategic where they don't move like Zodiac boats, they're battleships, and how do you do that? And you have to have a field general that is leading from the front, and that's what I see with Yvonne. He is just big vision, but it's not words, it's action. It's action and decisiveness.
So without divulging too much of the secret sauce that's behind the
Yeah.
curtain over the next 24 to 36 months, thematically, what should we be thinking about, and where should orthopedics be going? And then I'll look for hints within that statement, but where should it be going, and how should we be considering this market?
Yeah, I think it starts with sensor technology, right? We're all in on smart technology with our PIQ platform. I think the interconnectivity is super important to be able to get to a frontier of predictive analytics, right? What I view potentially somewhere down the road is the ability to manage the patient for who they are, and able to treat patients differently based upon the intraoperative data that we get, the postoperative data, the preoperative data, and now you're starting to predict how to treat the patient the best. And so when you think of smart technology, when you think of robotic platforms, augmented reality, we have Hip Insights, we have OrthoGrid, we have all these different AI components. It's bringing them all together to be able to give you the best data and vision to make sure you're providing the best care for your patient. And when you think of the ability to bring technology into an outpatient setting where patients want to go for their joint replacements, and you think of, how do you improve the clinical outcome for a patient? How do you make it more efficient? How do you do all those things that you or I, if we were to go in to get a total joint done, you would want to get in and out, and you'd want to rehab on your own and do those things. And that's what's happening, right? That shift is happening from a hospital setting or an acute care setting into an outpatient setting. And as we think of that movement, along with where we think it's going to be in 24 to 36 months, that is absolutely where it's going. And Zimmer Biomet, quite frankly, is leading the front on there. We have a partnership with CBRE, one of the largest builders, construction companies on the globe. Partnership to build ASCs and partner with them. We have the robotic platform, the interconnectivity. You think of the efficiencies. We have technologies and softwares that improve efficiencies interoperatively. And so as you think of the important things moving forward, not just in the robotic or smart space, it's much bigger and broader than that. Putting it all together is key.
And then finally, most of the other orthopedic companies don't have the ability to hyper-focus on a single industry. They're generally a division of a larger organization that at times, and I've seen it as a headhunter, have to compete, programs get redlined, there's not enough budget being made here, or cardiovascular is making more money here. Right. But here we have one focus, if I'm not mistaken.
For now.
For now.
Yeah.
One product, I should say,
yeah.
or family, musculoskeletal health, if we
right.
will. And we're not competing with anything else there. But we might be providing solutions in newer ways that maybe have not been native to the industry. Is that a safe statement?
100%. And one of the things that Yvonne has put in place is even more focus. In the past, it was hips and knees as an example. And now I'm the president of knees. And that's my only focus, is winning on knees. I work very closely with my counterpart on hips, but that person is focused on winning in hips. Before this was one, now it's two very distinct. And then across the board, that level of focus is being level set across all of Zimmer Biomet, which is fantastic from an efficiency standpoint and drive.
And you're bringing in ninja leaders to lead each of those verticals, but tied in above, Mark, right? Yep. Where you've got the ability to stay above all that as Joe solves knee problems, others solve hip problems, but it sounds like that technology is going to connect us all, though.
Yeah, it's almost like a platform, right? That services and supports all of it. And what Joe's saying, not just from a business unit perspective, but even on the commercial channel side, we have leaders in the recon space, we have leaders in the technology space, we have leaders in the ASC space. I think it's super important to have that drill down focus to make sure we're executing appropriately, which when we talked about earlier, the development of people in the organization, the opportunity to move and do more is super important for advancement. And I think not only for the performance of the company, but for the internal culture of our people, it's a great thing. And I think it's going to change the trajectory of who we are as we move from just a metal and plastic company into a solutions-based organization.
Yeah, and I love to hear this because I always go to talent. How are you going to attract talent over the next 5 to 10 years to deliver on these really aggressive, much needed, and challenging bogeys that you're going after? And it's going to be talent. And I think what I love to see is you're starting to see the smart early adopters who are going, it's not ortho. It's a digital solution company that happens to work in the ortho space. So it's going to be fun to watch talent that is maybe not native to an ortho organization start to bring a new mind share to CB at large.
That's exactly right. You hit it right on the head. It's taking a company and just applying some very intelligent technologies that ultimately help that patient, and having the patient, the customer-centric innovation, something Yvonne always says, and we live, is the most important thing. And the doctors want it. The doctors want more data for their patients. They're not making more doctors and nurses. Every single physician that I meet with says the exact same thing, like, help me be better. Give me the data that will enable me to help that patient. Give the patient the information so they can make decisions, and then they can move forward on their own potentially. And their recovery gets faster and better, and you start to impact that 20% curve. That's where the magic is. And so it's exciting. I'm pretty excited with Zimmer Biomet and what Yvonne has cooking, as I shared with you on the phone a couple weeks ago. But I'm super excited right now with all the technology that's right behind the curtain. So it's going to be a lot of fun over the next couple of years.
Mark, closing thoughts?
No, I agree. I think the one closing thought I would have is our basis is reconstruction, right? And we will continue to advance that platform. But understanding that we can't get to where we want to be without the continued adoption of technology, the intersection of efficiencies We got to continue to maintain those clinical outcomes. We'll continue to have a focus on metal and plastic, but our big focus to move forward, to be the boldest med tech company is to improve technology and make sure it's part of everything we do. And so from a talent perspective, from a product advancement perspective, we have to embrace that, and we have to have the diverse thinking that we didn't have 5, 10 years ago. And so moving forward is super exciting, and I truly believe we're at that tipping point.
Fantastic. Well, gentlemen, thanks for taking the time
Thanks,
out
Joe.
today.
Yep, great.
I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm Joe Mullings from 160 Studios. Be well.